Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show. Today we're going to continue our series on top 24s by position. And today we're going to talk about cornerbacks, repeaters, and non-repeaters. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. All righty, welcome everyone. I'm your host, Ricky Rodriguez. You can find me on X at RickyRod66. I'm joined by Sean Teague. You can find him on X at Sean8386. We're thrilled to be back with you again this week to talk about IDP cornerbacks, about IDP top 24, specifically cornerbacks. And we're going to talk about top 24 repeaters and top 24 non-repeaters. Now, this is our fourth show out of 9 that we're going to do in total regarding to top 24 and who's going to move into the top 24 and who's going to fall out. If you've missed any of the previous episodes that we've done so far, on the first one being on interior defensive linemen, defensive tackles, the second one being on edge, outside linebackers, the third one last week being on linebackers, the inside linebackers, you can go back and catch those on this same IDP Plus YouTube channel. Encourage you to do so. Get some nice comments about about how people are appreciating the good content and getting them thinking and so forth. I got several DMs related to that, interestingly. So with that, welcome, Sean. Glad to have you, man, again this week.
I'm glad to be back.
That's fantastic, dude. Well, look, let's start getting into this right away. And the first thing we're going to do is flash the average number of repeaters, as we've been doing for every show. And we're going to talk about cornerbacks. We're also going to give people a little preview of offensive repeaters as well. So cornerbacks, of the top 12 repeaters year over year, well, let me try that again. Of the top 12 scorers, only 3 on average repeat year over year. And this is based on a 10-year study. Of the top 24, only 8 repeat year over year. So cornerback actually has the most variance of any position. So from a dynasty perspective, it is one of those positions. If you have someone who's done really well, and we're going to talk about a lot of these guys from last year who we think are going to fall out of top 24, and you have them sitting on your roster, this might be a good opportunity to sell high on a lot of those guys for players at other positions. Also, we wanted to introduce the concept of, from an offensive perspective as well, and we'll be doing these in future shows, but you could see for the what I like to call the single positions except in superflex. So this was from a non-superflex perspective. On average over the last 10 years for quarterbacks, 18 of the top 24 repeat. For tight ends, 15 of the top 24 repeat. Whereas you see a lot more variance, only about half of the top 24 repeat for running backs and wide receivers. So just like the shows we've done so far, the one we'll do today and the ones we'll be doing forward, be a lot of great discussion and dialogue about who's going to jump into the top 24 and who's going to fall out. Now, Sean, on the offensive side of things, were there any surprises when you saw these offensive repeat rates?
The quarterbacks didn't really surprise me. We're used to that being pretty chalk year to year with the top guys, and then the middle guys are always the middle guys, and it's like the rookies and just the bridge quarterbacks, I guess, are the ones that are usually rotating. So that didn't surprise me as much. The tight ends did. I wasn't expecting that to be higher than the wide receivers and running backs. I know it's top heavy with like the elite guys, and then it just feels like it's wide open and it's like a revolving door. But this shows otherwise.
Yep. So when we get to the tight end show in particular, it'll be real interesting to talk through those. And of course, one of the things you've done a great job of is we do use the King's Classic scoring system for this event. I mean, for this series of shows. And you've gone back and historically looked at the repeat rates and what was of interest over the past several years since the King Classic event has started. So what did you learn when you looked at those, Sean?
For the cornerbacks,
For the cornerbacks, that is correct, sir.
we are looking at last year there were 9 repeaters, and the year before that there was only 6, which is lower
Of the
than
top 24.
the top 24, right? And only 2 players were in the top 24 all 3 years, and the names were a bit surprising. I know I questioned you on them before the show, and the answers were surprising. We were thinking Kenny Moore and Marlon Humphrey, and that's not the case. It was actually Taron Johnson and Diamadore Lenore, which not the names we were expecting at all. And if we go into the top 12 repeaters at cornerback, the numbers are terrible. Last year there was 1 that repeated.
Oh,
And
wow, just
the year
one.
before that was only 4. Last year was Devin Witherspoon was the only guy to repeat.
Wow. So, in terms of when people are thinking about their redraft league, Sean, and how they should approach drafting cornerbacks and so forth, what kind of advice would you give them based on, this 10-year study that we have showing on the PowerPoint slide here, and then your research?
The best I can say, my personal experience, the way I like to play is, if it's 20 round draft, if IDP only league, for instance, we're starting 2 cornerbacks. Those last 2 rounds is when I'm taking my cornerbacks, because it says the success rate is lower than the rest. So that will be my last 2 picks, and I will definitely be aiming for at least one of these top 24 guys, and then possibly looking at week 1 matchup, week 2 matchup. If I see a string of 2-3 games there where somebody has a really good opportunity for points there, if the schedule really boosts their production, then that's the guy I'm going to target with that second one.
All right, so great strategy recommendations for folks out there. And once again, from a dynasty perspective, when you see these repeat rates, folks, if you got some of these folks sitting on your bench and you have someone who's maybe a novice or not as experienced, good opportunity to maybe trade a top cornerback for maybe a top linebacker. You never know how things might play out there.
Absolutely.
So we'll quickly flash the cornerback scoring system here in Kings Classic. And typically I haven't gone through any of the numbers, or we haven't gone through any of the numbers. But as you can see, one of the things, there is a little bit of a boost for tackles here relative to some of the other positions. In fact, it has the highest, slightly higher, but it is the highest for tackles and assisted tackles from a scoring perspective. You can see 2.4 versus such a 2.1 for the linebacker. So that helps a little bit. Same for tackles for loss as well, being on the higher side. And of course, the cornerbacks and safeties get a little bit more points for pass defense versus a defensive lineman, who usually that's just a knocking down of a pass. So that's one of the reasons the scoring system is as such. Okay. All righty. So with that then, Sean, what do you think? Let's start looking at the top 24. And as we're doing that, one of the things I do like to call out is, and we've been calling out every show, is what the great Bob Harris of Football Diehard says, which we're trying to draft this year's best team, not last year's best team. And so that's why we're going through this exercise. And you can see we have the top 24 from last year on the screen. And in a second, we're going to talk about who we think's falling off and who we think's going to jump in to help you draft this year's best team. Now, Sean, when you first looked at this list of 24 and knowing that we had to get rid of 16, what were you thinking as you looked at the list? Easier exercise or hard exercise?
I thought it would be easy until I started marking the guys that we had to keep. We had to keep 8. And then I got down to about 12, and I was like, well, this is very unfortunate. And actually flip guys over and over. I would decide I like somebody slightly better, so I'd have to find out who to take out and put that guy back in. It was very frustrating, if I'm being honest with you. Not as bad as the linebackers, not as bad as that, but yeah, because I do like a lot of these guys. I like a lot of their situations, their strengths of schedule. The opportunities that are there, but just the research shows we can't keep them all. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly right. As much as it feels like it's just not going to happen. The numbers have shown it year over year. So before we actually flash and show the folks that you and I actually ended up agreeing on, if I remember correctly, 14 out of the 16 that we took off the list, there's just a couple that we ended up not in alignment on, and we'll talk about some of those here on next slide. But before we do that, just a quick promo for Fast Draft, the new Fast Draft app. With the code PLUS, PLUS, you can get up to a $50 match. So you put in $50 with the code PLUS, you get $50. If you put in 20, you'll get 20. So hopefully you'll be able to take advantage of it, really get to enjoy the Fast Draft app. There's IDP onlys. Some of these are, there's like 6-player drafts is all you're doing, so it's really fast. So I encourage you to check it out, the Fast Draft app. Promo code PLUS for up to $50 match. So now let's go ahead and reveal, almost sounds like on some game show for a second there. Let's reveal the top right. No, we're going to reveal the 14 players and then the 2 that we disagreed on and the ones that we agreed upon staying. So of the 24, the 6 that we agreed upon that we think will stay in the top 24, Alontae Taylor, Marlon Humphrey, Devin Witherspoon, Mike Sainristil, Diamador Lenore, and Teron Johnson. Those are the 6 that we agreed upon. Now, there's 2 others that I thought would stay in the top 24, Kenny Moore and Trent McDuffie, while Sean felt that Keyshawn Nixon and Tyreek Stevenson would stay in the top 24. So we're going to start talking about some of these folks, and one of the names I just mentioned, Keyshawn Nixon. Sean, why don't you share the reasons you left them on the list, and I'll talk a little bit about why I didn't leave them on the list.
All right, so Keyshawn Nixon, the last 2 years, dude has been on a tear. He's been wrecking up tackles from the slot, from outside, a little bit of special teams as well. We've seen him produce when Jair Alexander was injured and out of the lineup. We're pretty much, I think we're down to Javon Bullard being the slot guy now. So Keyshawn Nixon is one of the starting outside corners, it looks like. Jair Alexander today is gone. He's in a pretty pass-happy division right now, too, with the Bears offense really getting ready to take off, just like the Lions have in previous years. And then, well, Minnesota still got some pretty elite wide receivers out there. His name isn't as recognized as Alexander's. It doesn't hold the same prestige. So I think he will be targeted just like normal. And like I said, we see him produce last year without Alexander. I think he could do it again this year. And he also had some sacks, TFLs, and if you're in a league that rewards punt yardage, I'm not saying he's going to do it again this year, but last year I think he had 570, 580, somewhere around there. Big bonus.
Yep. So interesting points on Keyshawn Nixon. Now for our audience, a counterpoint, some counterpoints of this one. One of which is he made a comment, number 1 cornerback shouldn't be returning kicks. Now he backtracked that a little bit, but still it kind of shows his mindset that, will he be back there this year? So some of that bonus points he might have gotten for return yardage maybe goes away. That's a risk. Number 2 is, while Jair Alexander went away, they did sign Nate Hobbs. And Nate Hobbs may be on the list coming up from yours truly here. And Nate Hobbs, while he's played both outside and inside in the slot, his most effective playing position is within the slot. And while there's a little bit of talk about them moving people around and blah, 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 I envision Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine on the outside, Nate Hobbs in the slot, Javon Bullard potentially being an odd man out, by the way, if Evan Williams beats him out for that other safety role next to McKinney. But so even with that, so there's a couple of options there that could play the slot. not nearly the same amount good options to play on the outside, which means Nixon be on the outside more than where he got some of his more productive games when he played more in the slot. So he might sneak into the bottom 24, but as we're talking about the 16 that we had pulled out of this list, because of those reasons, that's why I pulled Nixon off the list.
I hear you, Ricky. I hear you. You can pick a lot of cases for a lot of these guys, especially this early in the off season. You know, we haven't seen any depth charts to really give us a great idea of what the plans are. Of course, injuries are coming up; they're going to happen too. But yeah, solid reasoning there. I don't hate it. One guy I took off that you left on, Mr. Kenny Moore. Tell us more about Kenny.
Oh, that was good. That was good. Put
Not
on film.
bad.
You'll be here all week.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Kenny Moore. I went back and forth. He was one of my last ones that I decided to leave on the list. He is turning 30 this year, which, you know, for those that have been watching the shows, that does concern me, particularly with a cornerback turning 30. But then I went and started thinking about who are the cornerbacks that the Colts have right now. They did sign Charvarius Ward, but they had Jalen Jones, who was on this list in the top 24, but we both pulled him off because he was one of those that was just barely good enough to get on the field, which is what we love, that create opportunities. I don't think that repeats this year again, particularly when they have Juju Brents, the former second-round pick, healthy as well. They did draft Justin Wally as well, who is more of a slot type. So I still envision this year Ward and Moore being on the corners and two wide receiver sets when they're playing against. And then he moves inside when teams go to three wide receiver sets, and whether it be Jalen Jones or I think it'll be Juju Brents, a former second-round pick, moving into that role. So I still think Moore has the opportunity to finish in the top 24. And looking at a couple of things from last year too, he had 84 combined tackles. He's had of the last 5 years, in 4 of them, he's had at least 3 interceptions. And in the last 7 years, he's had at least 4 tackles for loss. So there hasn't been this major drop-off year over year over year. He's been fairly consistent. And as a result of that, and by the way, he's had 3 pick sixes in the last 2 years as well, which certainly doesn't hurt. We know those aren't necessarily easily repeatable and probably won't repeat, but it just shows that he hasn't had a huge slip-off, and he was playing somewhat banged up last year. So that's my reason for Moore staying on the list. Sean, I'm sure you may have a counterpoint to that.
Just the age itself, there will be a drop-off coming, and I think it's sooner than later, actually. New defensive coordinator, he may have a different plan for Kenny Moore this year. And I don't recall the Bengals just tearing it up at slot corner there. So that kind of concerned me a little bit too, just how productive his role is going to be. And we've already spoke highly of the linebackers that are there, the defensive tackles. There's some safeties out there that are going to eat them up too. It just feels like there's a lot of mouths to feed on this defense. And Kenny Moore's age, I just wonder if we'll start seeing him play a little deeper, and maybe a young guy like Nick Cross, Cam Bynum, will come up and start stealing some of these tackles as well.
I did consider Lou Anarumo's defense at Cincinnati, and Mike Hilton, when healthy and when younger, played fairly well. True. Yeah, and did fairly well. But age did start catching up with him, and they did start substituting other people into that slot position for Hilton. But he was fairly successful when he played in that role. So that was part of the reason I left Moore in there.
Yeah.
So let's switch back to you now. And you kept Tyreek Stevenson on the list. So talk to me about Tyreek Stevenson.
Yeah, so he plays across from Jalen Johnson, who is considered one of the better, more elite PFF graded corners. Although last year I think he did drop back down a bit. So guys do tend to not throw his way. Kind of that Patrick Surtain, don't throw to him, throw to the other guy. And so far it's paid off. Kyler Gordon is there also in the slot to steal some tackles and whatnot, but he's had a little bit of trouble staying healthy. Tyreek Stevenson the last 2 years. He's definitely putting up numbers for IDP owners. I actually lost all my notes today, but from what I remember, there were a lot of pass deflections there too, and I consider those a repeatable year-to-year kind of stat, whereas sacks, interceptions are less repeatable. This guy's getting targeted a lot. In fact, I'd dare say he's probably one of the top 5 in the league at getting targeted, which means that's more tackle opportunities, more interceptions, more pass deflections, all those good stats I need for my points. He's getting them coming his way. And until they bench him or take him out of the lineup or whatever, quit throwing his way, I'm gonna continue to start him.
Yeah, so I just pulled up the stats for you. So Stevenson last year, 2 interceptions, 4 the year before. In terms of pass defenses, 12 last year, 16 the year before when he was in the year before, in both cases, he was a rookie. And not to mention, he's forced at least 1 fumble each of the last 2 years, with 2 as rookie as well. So Tyreek Stevenson is one of the ones that are debated versus Kenny Moore. But that slot cornerback you mentioned, Kyler Gordon, I went with him instead, and I added him to the list, which we'll talk about here. Which you'll see that list a little bit later here, so another spoiler here. But Dennis Allen is bringing that Saints defense to Chicago. And with that, that slot position, which Alontae Taylor played at the beginning of the year, and it helped him. And one of the reasons he was number 1 last year in this list was because he played a lot of that slot position until later in the year, till he moved to the outside because of injuries, which wasn't his best position. So he did get picked on out there.
Sure.
So he didn't do as well as he did in the slot, but he did get some scoring out there as well. So I see this year where Kyler Gordon plays that slot role, and Ugo Amadi came into that slot role when Taylor went outside, and he was very effective late in the year as well. Sure. So that Dennis Allen scheme has a lot to it, and so as a result, I put Gordon on the list, but I took out Tyreek Stevenson.
So, yeah, I completely get it. And looking at Dennis Allen's setup, over the last few years, it was Marshawn Lattimore, the elite guy, the top guy, which is Jalen Johnson this year, and then Paulson Adebo or whatever, Adebo, he's the Tyreek Stevenson, who beginning of last year just popped off, was having a phenomenal season before the injury. So we can see 2 corners really be productive in this defense, especially if you do have that kind of top guy, that elite guy. And so that's one reason I wasn't too scared to leave him on there either, just because we have seen that.
That's a great call out. And while Adebo got hurt, one of the stats that I like to self-generate and that I create is tackles per snap. Mm-hmm. And you got to be careful for cornerbacks and linebackers and so forth that don't play a lot of snaps when you look at that one. But for cornerbacks that play or linebackers or whoever that play a lot of snaps, it's really a great stat. And so it's one that I calculated. And Paulson Adebo, once again, with the Saints last year, in that same defense going to Chicago, Tyreek Stevenson was actually the leader in tackles per snap with over 7 tackles per snap.
Yeah.
So that does bode well for Tyreek Stevenson. And that's, like I said, that was one of the 2 that I kind of went back and forth on between him and Kenny Moore. So I absolutely understand your rationale for Tyreek Stevenson, and I do like it as well.
I get it, man. It's tough with this group, because we're keeping 11, and that was tough enough. And there's so many guys here that we can make a really good argument for staying in this top 8. And just, the flipping back and forth, it's a lot to think about, a lot to take in. And I was surprised of how many we had the same staying, removing, and all that. I was not expecting that at all. Corners are so volatile that I was expecting just 2 totally different lists here. So,
of course, now the ones we added in, the people see there's a big difference of who we added into the list. But,
for sure.
So our listeners and viewers will see that here shortly. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about Trent McDuffie, who I kept on the list as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. I left him off. It was a struggle for me to take him off, but I like some of these guys slightly better than him. And let's hear your argument.
All right. So, of course, McDuffie's had his best year in 2023. That year he had 80 combined tackles, 5 forced fumbles, 3 sacks, 7 pass defense, although no interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of those snaps, though, in 2023 were from in the slot. He played a lot more in the slot in 2023. So the question is, in 2024, they were hurting so bad at cornerback, he played way more on the outside. And that impacted his stats such that he only had 59 combined tackles versus the 80 the year before. He did have more pass defenses, 13, and he did have a couple of picks as well on the outside. So to be expected, tackles and stuff down, but maybe more passes thrown at the outside. And so that's how it worked out. But that's why he ended up last year in the 21 range versus in the top 12 the year before. So what does Ricky think in 2025? First thing is the Chiefs went out and signed Christian Fulton, and they got a steal of Noel Williams out of California in the 3rd round, I believe it was, and who many projected in the 2nd round, and actually some analysts had potentially as a late first. That was a bit of a stretch in my mind, but still a very, very good, talented rookie cornerback. They also have Jalen Watson coming back, who was dealing with injuries last year. So I really think the Chiefs were trying to do some stuff with the outside cornerback position to allow McDuffie to get more snaps in the slot. Now, is it a situation like I described with Kenny Moore where McDuffie starts on the outside along with Christian Fulton and then moves to the inside and slot on obvious passing situations, or when there's 3 receivers out there or 4 receivers, things along those lines? I think that's a high probability. And in that role, he also, he did get 3 sacks out of that as well. Helps his tackles for loss from that spot. So that's what gives me that is Ricky's argument, I guess, would say, for keeping Trent McDuffie in the top 24.
Not bad, Ricky. I was more concerned with him staying on the outside and not getting the tackle opportunities, the sack opportunities. With Shamari Connor also playing that slot last year, I think he stays there. So I do think McDuffie will stay outside. I think Connor is for at least starting the season. I think he will be the slot, the nickel, and then we'll start seeing Williams come in later on throughout the year, maybe rotating around. It's hard to say, man. With the way Spagnuolo plays, he's definitely going to use his corners for blitzing. He wants them to be able to move around and do all kinds of things, safeties, corners, any of them. Just trying to figure out who that main guy is going to be. There's been a lot of guys leave this defense over the last couple of years, so McDuffie seems like the last guy there that they can count on to be the rock, I guess, on outside. So I see him just being away from a lot of the plays and just not getting the stats he's going to need to stay in the top 24 here.
And so they did lose Justin Reed this past year.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions will be, will Jaden Hicks, the 4th round rookie from last year, break into the starting lineup to start at that safety position where Reed was, or do they use Connor in that role, who has more experience? And
Sure.
So it's a great point. So where will he be used? For now, you're planting your flag Connor in the slot, and right now I'm planting my flag on McDuffie. So it'd be real interesting to see how this goes. But once again, some of these things where there's a couple of ways this could end up going, as people are and our listeners and viewers and so forth are trying to figure out maybe some of their draft strategy, where there's a little bit more risk on some of the folks we're leaving the top 24. Maybe they're put these folks a little bit lower on their draft board.
Yeah, especially this early, still in the off season. Closer we get to the season start, it'll be interesting to kind of look back at these right before week 1 and see see how much we've changed our minds on some of these.
And we may just do a show or 2 on that very topic, Sean, to let our listeners know, and we might even rank these top 24 as well. And so, get ready for that, folks. All right, so you last one we'll do here we'll do 2 more here in this. Who we kept, we each do one in Diamador Lenore from San Francisco. And why don't you remind folks of what your research showed that you talked about earlier in the show? But let's start there.
Yeah, so he's one of only 2 corners to be in the top 24 over the last 3 years, and that's Now, he's not high on that list. He never cracked the top 12, I don't think. If he did, it was only once. But
Yeah, he did this past year. He was number 11.
okay, yeah. But the rest of them, he's like 15 to 20 range, but he's solid every week. He's giving you a handful of tackles every week. So you get a good baseline. We've seen it with different defensive coordinators. Um, when you have an elite pass rusher, Nick Bosa playing in front of you, that helps a lot too. So pass happy or NFC West also. A lot of slot guys there that need covered. And him being in the slot, he's getting the tackles, he's making the plays. What else did I have on him? I
Well,
don't.
and then the 49ers have been trying to solve the cornerback problem, and yet, where they can leave Lenore playing strictly on the outside or more strictly in the slot. And while they've used different draft picks to try and solve that problem, they, or signed different free agents. They still haven't been successful in doing it. So Lenore plays on the outside when it's too wide. He moves to the inside when it's more than too wide. So that's part of the reason I left him on the list as well.
Yeah, you got 79 tackles, 84 tackles, 85 tackles the last 3 years. Those are fantastic numbers for a corner to be that
Yep.
consistent. Add in a few interceptions each year, and then strength of schedule wise, these guys, I believe they're the second by my count, second best schedule for corners. So strength of schedule is on the side. Um, Robert Sala's back. I feel like that's just going to help him out even more. Um, yeah, there's no real competition there either. And you factor in the question marks at linebacker as well. Opens up a little more tackle opportunities while these guys are out there kind of getting their feet wet, kind of learning the ropes too. So, yeah, I see him as kind of the enforcer there behind him. That's all I got, Ricky. That's it.
All
I
right.
just I just like the guy. He's one of my favorite corners to draft.
Yeah, exactly. He's definitely got a solid floor, and with those tackles, so absolutely. And then last one I'll just mention is Riley Moss here. So both of us took him off the list, and the big reason for me was the drafting of Jahdae Barron. So I think Barron, who went, I believe Denver was either 20 or 21 overall in the whole draft. Barron has lots of position versatility. So he's one that I see actually beating out Riley Moss, who really struggled in the back half of last year. And granted, this is opposite of Patrick Surtain as well.
Yes.
So, and once again, another spoiler alert: Barron's on my list of those moving into the top 24, even as a rookie. So I see Barron kind of starting on the outside, and I do see Moss coming in when they go three wide, and Barron dropping down to the slot. So I think the person that's impacted the most, who is on this list at number 6 as well, is Jaquan McMillan. So I think Barron actually screws up both McMillan and Moss this year, and Barron ends up in the top 24. And with all the talk about the Broncos needing running back, maybe a more explosive wide receiver, maybe trading up to get more of a joker like Tyler Warren, even though they had signed Ingram already, they went defense and they targeted Barron. And some of the post-draft interviews with Sean Payton and the GM Patton talked about how they just started watching them, and then they started watching more and more, and they said, okay, let's keep this on the down low, and we're really quiet. Peyton even sent a signal out there that they needed running back, blah blah blah, and everybody was thinking of Marion Hampton, and then they came with Barron. They really wanted Barron, and so I see Barron impacting both McMillan and Moss here.
I totally agree. And I had McMillan in a lot of places last year. He was one of my favorite corners to draft, and he paid off. He had a really good season. Riley Boss, rookie came in, did well for fantasy purposes, but he did struggle. But rookie getting targeted. Nobody wants to throw at the defensive player of the year. And I think you're right, and I think Barron screws up both of them. And if not, uh, I think he actually messes up Brandon Jones at safety a little bit as well, because I do think he's going to be kind of everywhere, and he's single handedly going to take out this entire secondary for us in IDP, which is crazy to think about.
Yep. And Brandon Jones is on the top 24 safety list when we talk about safeties next week. So it'll be interesting to see if we think it impacts Brandon Jones enough to take him out of the top 24. All righty. So before we go next to show you who we are moving into the top 24, a couple of things. First off, a couple of shout outs to some of our listeners / viewers who put some comments and questions into YouTube. I want to start off with Luca Cruz, and I hope I'm not butchering that. So Luca and I, we had some, and yourself had some replies going back and forth. And in Luca's last reply to me, he shared with me that he's in Switzerland. And so that's the first time I've ever had someone from Switzerland actually give some comments and all. So if there's anybody else out there that's from outside the United States, love for you to put into the YouTube comments and let us know. We want to see what kind of international reach we're having here. But
That's
Luca
awesome.
also said, and I hope it was Luca Cruz one word. So I hope I hope I'm not butchering it. But so Luca said he only knows of 2 offensive and IDP leagues in all of Switzerland, and so he's getting a true advantage by listening to us against these other 20 to 25 players that they're playing against it all. So shout out to Luca in Switzerland.
I didn't know we were international, Ricky. This is big.
We are. And Kevin Hutchinson, who has been a regular and been following regularly and so forth. So Kevin got on board and he had a question about Teddy Buchanan that we asked. So once again, by the way, if y'all are watching or listening or, however you're doing, if you're on Spotify, you can go later to the YouTube channel for IDP Plus and you can put in your comments or questions and we're happy to kind of answer them because we got some questions about Chase Young and some thoughts about Karlaftis and so forth after the last show. So shout out to those guys. And there's others. And then Jim Bob 5838. And then Joseph DeCesar. I'm probably butchering that last name. I know I am. He actually wanted to start jumping at defensive backs, and he says, "I hope Winfield's on y'all list, basically." And I said, "Well, you have to wait and see when we do safeties in next week's show, but there's a possibility we'll be talking about Winfield, So shout out to some of our listeners. Appreciate y'all putting that in. Particularly shout out to Switzerland. Please let us know any of y'all if y'all have international ties. Okay, the other thing, real quick, the Fantasy Football Expo is coming up August 8th through 10th in Canton. I'll be there. Many others that you hear about on Sirius XM. There is just a big deal sign that I'm not allowed to talk about. So there's another big name brand that will have that'll be doing a sponsorship at the Fantasy Football Expo. So hopefully that'll be coming out in the near future. So anyway, come and check it out. Great time in Canton, Ohio. Go tour the Hall of Fame, meet a lot of people in the fantasy football industry, and just general folks like me, not superstars, or anything along those lines, but good people, hopefully, Unfortunately,
we're
Sean
big in
can't be.
Switzerland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Luca, why'd you fly in from Switzerland, man? We'd love to meet you in person. And Sean unfortunately can't be there this year, but hopefully he'll be able to be there next year. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and move forward to the who's moving to the top 24. And we have, and I'd counted it before and I forget, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 names that we agreed upon and 9 that we didn't. So as a reminder to our listening / viewing audience, we had to add 16 in, 7 we agreed upon, 9 we did not. There's a lot of cornerbacks out there, and Sean talked about his draft strategy. But a lot of these folks that I think we're going to talk about here that you can see on these lists, might be some of the ones that you want to, keep in your hip pocket and target for some of those later rounds in your draft so you can get more of the top folks at some of the other positions. So, Sean, one of the ones I wanted to ask you about is Jarvis Brownlee, because on my side of the fence, for lack of a better term, I had Roger McCreary and L'Jarius Sneed. So we both had some Tennessee flavor there. But talk about why you had Brownlee on the list.
Yeah, and if looking at this list, you'll see several cornerback pairs that we have, where I chose one, you chose the opposite guy, basically. So it says we really like the team itself to have the opportunity to get these guys the points, and then it came down to splitting hairs on who's going to get those points. One thing I didn't mention earlier, going back and looking at these at the previous years of the top 24 here, it averages about 2 to 3 rookies each year that join the list, and about 5, 6 second year players will be on the list each year. So essentially, a third of the top 24 is either rookie or second year player. And one of the second year players I really like was Jarvis Brownlee, mostly because he was the only Titans cornerback to really produce last year. L'Jarius Sneed came in and actually really did not look good. Then got injured, played 5 games. So he was out. Chidobe Awuzie was there as well. He played half the season. He didn't look as good either. He definitely wasn't producing IDP wise. Roger McCreary played just about the entire season, did not produce well either. Jarvis Brownlee, a rookie last year, came in, gave us plenty of tackles, some pass deflections that we really needed, and kind of saved that secondary for us. And he looks to be in line to be the starter again, opposite of L'Jarius Sneed. He played well enough that the Titans dropped Awuzie, just cut him loose. So he's pretty much earned a starting outside spot, I believe. And if you're a quarterback, you hear the name L'Jarius Sneed, you probably want to go against that, right? Jarvis Brownlee's on the other side. I think he's the target. He's the one the guys are going to go after, and I think he's going to benefit again from being the top cornerback in this group.
Great call, very fair call out. And you're right in terms of Tennessee. And we thought there was, it's a question of which one. And in both the case of McCreary and Sneed, McCreary only played 653 snaps this past year. L'Jarius Sneed only played 5 games, to your point. But if you look the year before, and we talked about some of the floor tackles, McCreary in 2023 had 86 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, along with 6 pass defenses. L'Jarius Sneed, his last 3 years before 2024, 78 tackles, 108 tackles, 76 tackles, with 14, 11, and 8 pass defense. And he's had either 2 or 3 interceptions the last 4 years, once again, before last year.
Mm-hmm.
So in both cases, the feeling is 2024, at least in my, was an aberration for both of them. I think they have an opportunity with being fully healthy. McCreary, while he played about 15 games, left a couple of games injured, was never really 100% now. And so I really think that both those guys have opportunities to potentially repeat near some of those 2023 numbers. It's not like Tennessee's going to be that much better than they've been the last 2 years. So usage would be similar, et cetera. So assuming they can stay healthy, I have those two, but you have a great argument for Jarvis Brownlee as well. So keep all these Tennessee cornerbacks in mind here as you're considering your draft picks.
Yeah, one thing to point out with Sneed and McCreary, their previous years were with different defensive coordinators, with Sneed being in Kansas City, and then whole new coaching staff came in last year for Tennessee. So with all the changes there, I don't know that we'll see McCreary used the way he was before Callahan and his crew came in there. I think it's something Wilson, Denard Wilson, something like that.
Devad or Devard, something like
Yeah.
that.
I can't remember. And I really didn't dig much on his history or anything to check into it. It just looking at the games last year, the Titans were just kind of getting blown out in several of them. So the passes drop. You don't get as many passes. And so when they were passing, they were targeting the rookie. So I'm assuming he's still going to get plenty of targets coming his way. But yeah, definitely all 3 of these guys are worth looking into come draft day.
Right. And I'm a numbers guy, and boy, that is a great call out too. In fairness, about the change in defensive coordinators and defensive systems that could have impacts to McCreary and Snead. So it's a great point. But going back to your numbers, the in terms of the number of rookies and second year cornerbacks that end up in the top 24, That's a great stat that if people haven't heard that before, that's something people need to tuck away not only for this year, but for the future as well. So not only what they're learning from repeat rates on this show, but then, rookies and second-year cornerbacks as well being that high as a percentage of the top 24 cornerbacks. So great call out, Sean.
Cornerbacks overall are fairly young compared to the other positions. We don't have Cam Haywards and Demario Davises, Lavonte David, stuff like that in the corners. It's once you hit that late 20s, early 30s, you either go to safety or you're gone. It's just it's a young man's game built on speed. Who can cover these receivers? Who can get there the fastest, stay with them. So the lifespan is shorter there. It looks like. And speaking of a young second-year guy, Cooper Dejean. Tell us a little more about him, Ricky.
Well, Cooper Dejean made both of our list. And what was interesting about Cooper Dejean, he did not finish in the top 24 last year, but part of the reason was he didn't start until game 7, if I remember correctly last year. It was either game 6 or game 7, pretty sure it was game 7. So that didn't give him the opportunity to accumulate stats throughout the year. And so Fangio purposely did that to give him a chance. And Dejean had also had some injuries he was overcoming and missed some of the preseason, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, but once he got there, he was quite the stud, including getting a pick 6 in the Super Bowl and helping the Eagles to win the Super Bowl last year. The risk, though, for Dejean is that he gets moved to the outside because Darius Big Play Slay got released. They didn't really sign anybody else except for Dory Jackson, who hasn't exactly been a stud cornerback or healthy or you name it the past few years. He's made great money.
Yes.
I'm still bitter about him about choosing USC over LSU when he was coming out of high school, but I digress. Yeah. But, so you got you have Keely Ringo, who was drafted in the 4th round, who struggled with some of the speed aspects. And then you have Eli Ricks, who was an undrafted free agent. I mean, so that's some of your top cornerbacks there. I really think Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, really wants to leave Dejean in the slot. The question is, can those other guys or one of them hold up the cornerback position? Or is it a situation where, similar to what we were talking about, like with the Kenny Moores of the world, Dejean maybe plays in 2 cornerbacks on the outside and then moves into the slot when it's 3 wide or et cetera. So I think that is probably the worst case scenario that happens versus full-time slot. But even with full-time slot, he'll get 85% of the snaps because 90% of the snaps because they use him as also that third linebacker in that slot role. So Dejean, I feel like even with that risk of outside cornerback, still can jump into the top 24 and probably even into the top 12. Sean, anything you'd add to that?
No, I'm right there with you. I think his usage is going to be spot on. 80 to 90% of the snaps, I think he'll be out there. We've seen his hustle. We've seen his playmaking abilities. He forced a fumble, a couple recoveries, deflections, half a sack. So that means that they're using him down at the line for sure. And even if not, I think Fangio was smart enough to blitz him if he does have him on the outside in certain scenarios. So yeah, I think he's going to build on that second half of the year, the playoffs, and all that. He's got a lot of momentum going into this year, and their schedule, strength of schedule wise, they're top 10. So it looks good.
Very good. And then for those in return that get points in for return yards, Britton Covey did not get re-signed, and when Covey was injured and didn't play in the Super Bowl and so forth, Cooper Dejean was their punt returner, so there could be an opportunity there if they're willing to risk him back there, which that could change year over year, but there's an opportunity for some return yards as well. Now, on your list, you had Jamel Dean and sort of what we talked about, like with Tennessee and we talked about with Chicago. We both thought there were some opportunities, but we picked different people. I had Jacob Parrish, you had Jamel Dean. So tell everybody why you put Jamel Dean on the list.
I felt that he will start the most games out of the Tampa cornerbacks. Whereas I do think Zion McCollum, who I almost left on this list as well, uh, if not for the fear of a rookie taking over his spot later on in the year. I felt Jamel Dean is the most sure starter there, where the others I could see moving, rotating around, even at slot. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. Could be Tyke, could be Izian. He's the only one that feels locked in outside of like Antoine Winfield. So in years past, he's graded well with PFF, but not to the point where guys don't target him. So he does get plenty of targets. I like their schedule. I like the division they're in to get the tackles to get interception opportunities, especially with young cornerbacks with the Saints and the Falcons and Panthers. All three of them are young quarterbacks. I see these guys being behind games, so they're going to have to throw. They're going to target their stud receivers. Jamel Dean's going to be the guy that covered those stud receivers. The problem with Jamel Dean is he does get injured, so that very well could keep him out of the top 24. But he's the only one I could pinpoint to give me those best shots at giving me the points I want from those games. So, but there is injury risk for sure.
Well, when I built my list and I went in with Jacob Parrish, one is you had already given me the heads up on the rookies. And so I was like, which rookies might have an opportunity? And I thought Jacob Parrish could be one of those that has a chance. But I also wanted to make sure we talked about the Tampa Bay secondary as well, and then, of course, I got your list and saw Jamel Dean on it as well. So the Buccaneers really had some injury problems in the secondary last year. And so now for outside cornerback, they have Jamel Dean, they have Zion McCollum. They drafted Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame.
Yes.
And so that left three for the outside. And then at the safety position, Jordan Whitehead left as a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian Izian, while he got some playing time and had some stats, some counting stats, he was an undrafted free agent and not necessarily let's just say he's not a stud, okay? But look, he's a professional NFL football player. All these guys are. So I felt that Tyke Smith, who played when wasn't hurt, he missed a few games. He played mostly the slot. My gut is telling me that Tyke's going to move into that Jordan Whitehead safety position. That could be wrong, but that's what my gut says, creating the opportunity for Jacob Parrish in the slot. And so that's why I went that route. But I think what we're telling you all is that somewhere the Tampa Bay cornerbacks are huge opportunities. McCollum was a top 24 last year. Dean, great argument in terms of the division and the younger quarterbacks with Penix and either Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler with the Saints. Bryce Young, okay, he finished the year strong, but will that continue kind of thing? Or was that just a fluke those last few games? So a lot of young quarterbacks in that division alone, the 6 games that create lots of opportunities for these Tampa Bay secondary members. And so anyway, I went with the rookie playing the stats argument that you had, and who I think will potentially be in the slot. But Tyke might end up staying in the slot. It would be something that we're watching as we get into training camp.
I've seen it both ways. I've seen people say he's moving to safety. Then I've seen no, he's going to stay the slot. I don't think they know at this point. But the Buccaneers themselves, I expect to be in a bunch of shootouts with their offense. I think we'll still click without Liam Cole in there. So in shootouts, it's passing. It's passing. So the corners are going to get their points this year. And this is one that we're going to look back in a couple of weeks, and this entire depth chart is going to be probably way different. There's actually several teams that I looked at. I like the situations. I like the defense. I just don't know who's starting yet. And one of those teams was the Raiders. And so one of the guys you got on your list, I almost put on here too, and that is rookie Dejean Porter.
Dejean Porter, yes. So third-round rookie out of Iowa State, was a former wide receiver that's got moved to cornerback just in the last couple of years, but he's got that height, length, and speed that the Raiders love, whether it be a wide receiver through the years or even at cornerback. And his competition includes Eric Stokes, former first-round pick, but a cast-off of the Packers. Jacorian Bennett, who has struggled to stay healthy since he was picked early by the Raiders. Darnay Holmes, who has been, let's just call it a journeyman, for lack of a better term. He's bounced around a little bit. And then last year's 5th or 6th rounder, who was known to be developmental, and I can't pronounce it. It's Dejean Richardson. I probably butchered that first name, but he really struggled last year.
Yeah.
So I think the Raiders are going to be incented and want to go ahead and put Porter on the field right away. And what happens when you have a young cornerback? He's going to get targeted a lot. And this year's Jalen Jones / maybe Riley Moss / etc., who good enough to probably the second best cornerback to be on the field for this team, but not very good. That'll get targeted a lot, and with him being a former wide receiver, that could end up with some picks, just like Jalen Jones ended up getting last year. And Porter's not afraid to tackle either. And so for those reasons, that's why I have Porter on the list.
Absolutely. Pete Carroll himself has come out and already compared him to Richard Sherman, being a former receiver as well, and making that switch and similar builds. So he's already envisioning him as his top corner. I just wasn't ready to put him on the list. I got to see a little more. But yeah, that was a great pick, and I loved every bit of it.
Well, we've talked about the Saints quite a bit, but then you also had another Saint on your list, Kool-Aid McKinstry. So why don't you talk about him and maybe even wrap in a little bit of Alontae Taylor discussion into that as well?
Yeah, this is actually this is a little more of a gut call on this one. Alontae Taylor, I think he's going to go. I assume he's going to go back to the slot. I assume Kool-Aid's going to stay outside, and Isaac Yiadom, I think, will be the other outside guy. I don't know that for sure, but I do know the Saints offense looks awful right now at quarterback, and I have low expectations. So I think this defense is going to be on the field a lot. And Kool-Aid, let's see, how would you describe his play last year? I know it was limited, but
average. I'd say average, but he improved as the year progressed.
Sure, but he doesn't scare you, so you're going to throw his way, right? Until he can do something big. I think he just gets targeted a lot. He's still kind of got a rookie vibe to him, in the eyes of a NFL cornerback. They're like, hey, he's still the young guy. He didn't play the full season. He wasn't a full-time starter. That's the guy I'm going to target until he shows me I shouldn't be targeting. So I think he just gets targeted a lot. And with targets will come tackles, deflections, possibly interceptions. So I really just like his spot on the defense. I do think he is the starter on the outside, and I think he just gets lit up. Whether he turns those into big plays or not, if he can, that'd be great. But my gut says he's actually going to be a really improved player, and he's going to take a big leap forward. But until he makes that full leap or teams start staying away from him, they're going to pepper him up till that point.
Yeah, and so to your point, I've been reading a lot of the minicamp stuff and OTA stuff, and Alontae Taylor's been playing Brandon Staley's star position primarily, but they did say he has been moving around. But It looks like that Derwin James type of role that we saw the Chargers how Brandon Staley used him. Same thing for Alontae Taylor. It's part of the reason I left him on, as one of the ones that stayed on the top 24 list. Which means I do think that McKinstry stays on the outside. I do think he will get targeted, but I think the other cornerback slot, whether it be Isaac Yiadom or however you say his name, could get targeted even more than McKinstry. So that's the one reason that I did put McKinstry on the list, but you do make a good argument that the Saints defense will be on the field quite a bit, as I think the offense will struggle. The offense will try and run the ball quite a bit to milk the clock and so forth, so it's not too bad blowouts. But even with that, they brought in Cam Akers, for a tryout or for their mini camp over these 3 days here, and he might get signed. So that's how little faith they have in the backup running backs to Kamara. So all of that being said, pretty good argument from McKinstry. Doesn't quite make the list for me, but I could see your point there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, this was a partial gut feeling on this one. You could make the argument for anybody on the Saints defense, and I'd be like, yeah, they're going to be on the field. You're right. So, yeah, one team that did make some moves this year, Detroit Lions. They brought in DJ Reed, who I picked just because I thought, he takes over as the top corner now that Carlton Davis is gone. But he's not that big of a name. He's a decent player, but he's been playing opposite of Sauce Gardner, so I think quarterbacks are going to target him and really see what he's made of. And you also picked a Detroit Lion here, rookie, I believe, Mr. Ennis Rakestraw Jr.
Actually, second year Enos Rakestraw
Second
Jr.
year, my bad.
And so Terry and Arnold was one of the top cornerbacks, but not in a stat that you want. That's in penalties from a
Yeah.
cornerback perspective. And Rakestraw, unfortunately, was injured this past year. And Rakestraw has granted his OTAs and all that kind of stuff, but he's been getting really rave reviews from year 2 to year 1 in terms of significant improvement. Arnold, to me, struggled so badly last year that I think Rakestraw is actually going to leapfrog him and move into the starting lineup. And I do think DJ Reed is a very, very good cornerback. I think the Jets hated to let him go. They just couldn't afford to pay him and so forth. And so I don't think they're going to be targeting him as much. And I think if Rakestraw does break into the lineup, he'll be essentially a rookie because he didn't play much last year. I think he gets targeted more. Okay. So I would actually put Terry and Arnold. If Rakestraw doesn't beat him out, I would put Arnold on this list as well. But right now, I do think Rakestraw beats him out. That's why I have Rakestraw on the list.
Yeah, I don't trust Arnold. That's I like the spot for somebody, and I considered Robertson as well, but I don't know, just something about this defense. It just doesn't seem like he's. I don't think he's going to play enough to get the opportunities to take over anybody else. So that's kind of why I went with Reed. Just because I think he is like a tier, kind of like Jamel Dean. He's good, but he's not the elite guys that quarterbacks are just completely scared of. I do think they'll test him, but I do like the call out for Rakestraw there.
All righty. Well, so there's one that I put on my list, and it's got 5 asterisks or 5 stars next to it, just because I wanted to make sure that we talked about it. And in my fantasy leagues, he's actually got a wide receiver designation, and so I think people know, if you're just listening, know where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of, depending on your league settings, he could get stats for defense. So I included Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
So Sean, we'll start with you in terms of your thoughts on what you're seeing in maybe some of the leagues and scoring systems and so forth. So let's just start there.
Yeah, well, we've seen the Scott Fishbowl. If anybody follows that, you can see where they made special scoring just for Travis Hunter to get his points on defense there, which is actually kind of a little bit of a groundbreaking for IDP to potentially get in something this big. Although I don't think it'll stick, but it's at least making people change. And I don't know if you were on Twitter or any of that when that was released, when they released the scoring for IDP on there. People were losing their minds thinking they were going to have to learn IDP, and the others were thinking, oh, it's here. And nobody paid attention to what it actually said. So,
yeah,
which is a good reminder. Always pay attention to the scoring and the positions and the settings in your league. That way you don't embarrass yourself on social media.
great call out, because there was a lot of people that if there was a ledge, they were jumping off of it.
Oh yeah. There's so many people having to get talked off a cliff here. It was unreal because, like I said, you had one group going, "Oh my God, IDP's here," and the other going, "Oh my God, IDP's here," and nobody's seen that there were no IDP positions. It was just
Exactly.
IDP scoring added to anybody. So if Justin Jefferson is trying to tackle a cornerback who just made a pick, he could get points for the tackle as well. So. But yeah, Travis Hunter is transcending the entire fantasy football community right now. He's forcing us to implement scoring for everybody. And this unicorn thing he's got going on here, it's good and bad, I think.
Yeah. What's interesting is in some of the dynasty leagues, um, for defaults, when they were first set up, people says just like the Justin Jefferson example
Mhm.
that you use. Yeah, okay, they're going. Commissioners are setting the settings and on. They're like, yeah, if a wide receiver gets a tackle or something like that, we'll give them a point for it.
Yeah,
And never considering, and rightfully so, by the way, because Travis Hunter is such a uh, uh, unique specimen, skill set, whatever you want to call it, that something like this would happen. So for those of you in Dynasty, one of the first things you need to do for all your leagues is go look at the scoring system and see what it says. And does it award for tackles and pass breakups and all for your offensive players?
yeah,
And then you also need to check as well how Travis Hunter is categorized from a position perspective. Is it wide receiver? Is it cornerback? Is it dual eligibility for wide receiver and cornerback, or wide
right.
receiver and defensive back? All those things come into play. So a lot of the leagues I play in, even though Hunter is not, he's listed as a wide receiver because most of my dynasties are on my fantasy league, MFL. And in those leagues, they get points for tackles and pass defenses and so forth. And so I had to put him on the list just to make sure, even though this was the Kings Classic is done on MFL and
Yeah,
Hunter is listed as a wide receiver, but he can still get points for the defense. And I just want to make sure we had that discussion for our audience. Sean?
yeah, and Sleeper has him as wide receiver and cornerback, the biggest cheat code out there right now. And last I seen, Yahoo had him listed as just a cornerback.
Oh, just a
So
cornerback.
just
Oh,
a
that's interesting.
cornerback. And that may change. Sometimes they change theirs right before the season starts. One thing I don't like about not NFL Sleeper has changed theirs mid-season before on an instance or two, if I'm not mistaken. So I
Taysom
don't.
Hill, probably.
Jason Hill was one I was thinking, and there was another. I can't think of who it was, but I don't like that. So make sure you know your rules. Be aware that your platform may make a change, although I don't think they will uh, with Hunter this year. But yeah, so if he's strictly listed as a corner, I play a lot of IDP only leagues, so it doesn't really affect much because our scoring is set up just for defense. There's no offensive added on there. But some of them, by default, still list offensive points. So something you have to check because now he's the number one pick in IDP only leagues. If so,
Exactly.
if he can get points on offense, yeah, it's unfair.
Yeah. So whether you're new to IDP or new to fantasy football, one of the top 10 rules of always getting started is know your scoring systems. And this is a prime example as to why.
We have to say it every year, and the people that should not forget that still seem to forget that. So I'm sure I'll forget one this year as well, but I try to write all mine down on paper. That way, when I'm sitting there doing my draft, I flip to that draft. It shows me what positions I need, what the points are, any advantage or disadvantages I got on there, and that's how I draft.
Well, I'm not quite that old school. I actually use an Excel spreadsheet.
I'm in a lot of leagues, so it's easier for me just to carry the notebook around and just flip to that page. So I might have 20 drafts at once, different offense only, defense only, mixed, whatever. It's the only way I can keep up.
All righty. Well, so uh, that concludes what we're going to talk about on cornerbacks today. Before we do a preview of the top 24 for safeties, which will be our next show, but we'll show you who's in the top 24 list based on the scoring system, and we'll get you all thinking as well. It'd be to get ahead, and so it'd be interesting to see if you're thinking ahead, and then what we share in the show next week. But before I do, just a shout out for idpplus.com. Great site, incredible tools, great articles, rankings from some really top, not only IDP knowledgeable folks, but offensive knowledgeable folks as well. Great Discord channel. Encourage you to join the family. You can join for a month and check it out. or join for longer. They have different subscriptions. Go to idpplus.com, check it out. Really appreciate if y'all do that. All righty. So with that, let's quickly go to the safeties. And for safeties, as a reminder for folks, only 3 of the top 12 repeat on average based on the 10-year study. 10 of the top 24 repeat on average. So that means 14 names will be coming off of this list. 14 names will be added on. We actually, like Jamari Connor's name came up in today's show, for example. So it'll be real interesting here as we get into this coming week. Sean, any preliminary thoughts as you look at that list?
Oh boy. Several of these guys have switched teams, so I'm really going to have to dig on these to see how much this is going to affect some of these guys. Some new additions. We talked about Brandon Jones.
Schemes.
Yeah, new defensive schemes. Oh, yeah. Oof. This is going to be tough, man. Just look at this list already. There's a lot of names I don't want to take off.
Exactly. So listeners, love to hear your thoughts as well, and / viewers. And so with that we'll do safeties next week. So that'll round out our 5 true IDP true positions. And then after that, we'll get into the offensive position. We haven't decided the order of those yet, but so stay tuned for that. We'll probably start with quarterbacks. And Sean, any closing thoughts as we wrap up the show here?
Just a reminder that, we're trying to pick for the future here, and quote Bob Harris there about, not drafting last year's best team. We're showing you the numbers from year to year of what the chances are. We liked all those top 24 cornerbacks from last year, but history says only 8 are going to repeat. And looking what I actually 6 and 9 are what the 2 years I showed. So it still applies to today. That was a 10-year average from a few years ago, and that's the reality. So this exercise is showing just how tough this really is. Even though we like all these safeties on this list right here, the reality is they're not all going to repeat. And so we're really digging deeper here, trying to get a better understanding, calculate possibilities, schemes, everything. Like it's fun for us, and we're really hoping this is going to make us better players ourselves, and also really help you guys out there as well.
Exactly. Our goal with doing this is really to help our listening audience here and viewing audience. So with that, if you like the show, please give a thumbs up, and please join the channel as well if you haven't done that, so you get notifications when shows like such as ours or others out there, such as Axton Harding, Johnny Freaking Fantasy, some really great content out there, and many more out there, okay? Including some great betting information as well. So if you have comments, suggestions, questions on other players or players we talked about, please put them into this YouTube channel on the show, the specific show. We'll get to them and give you some feedback. Give me a follow at RickyRod66. Give Sean one at Sean8386. And of course, you can catch this one and all the replays of previous shows on that IDP Plus YouTube channel. With that, we'll see you in another week or so. On behalf of Sean Teague, this is Ricky Rodrigue wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another, and we are out of here, and we will catch you next week.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.